It's Bourbon Night. Hello, I'm Chad.
I'm Sarah.
Sarah, we have the world's first Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that was aged in London, England.
Well, would you look at that?
Would you look at that? There it is, right here.
We might find ourselves there in about 6 months.
You know what?
Did you
I think
know?
you're right. I did know that. Yes, we live together.
I told you.
Yeah. You know, this is going to be a review, but I feel like we're going to get a little bit more into the story behind it than we normally do. So I hope you guys don't mind that. There will be chapter markers down there if you want to just jump to the review if the history part doesn't interest you.
An educational uncorking.
Yes. Well, let's get it, in the glass opening up. So pause for cork pop. Oh, there it goes.
That one didn't want to.
That one had an accent on that pop.
I like the bottle.
Pop. It was.
Are you from London? You talk like you're from London.
You talk like you're from London. So as this kind of sits in the glass, we'll tell you the specs first. It's 95 proof. It's around 6 years old.
Aged in Kentucky, 6 years.
Around that,
And then it
yes.
spends 6 weeks?
6 weeks
on its
crossing
way.
the Atlantic
And
over
then
there.
An undisclosed amount of time once
Where
it's in London.
Yeah, it sort of mellows out over in London due to their lower temperatures, less humidity, that type of thing.
And it's distilled at Wilderness Trail.
Yeah, so Dr. Pat Heiss, Shane Baker, they were involved in making this, but it all kind of stemmed from Pat Madden and David Wild having a conversation. And this is one of the reasons why I love this, is because these two guys were at the Kentucky Derby. One is a Kentuckian, Pat Madden, the other one an Englishman, David Wild. And they were talking, and they just had this idea about what would happen, and we've all had these conversations.
In a world
what
where...
would happen, yeah, if you took Kentucky bourbon and you aged it over in London, and then eventually it happened. So I love it when a plan comes together, as the expression goes. But here's sort of the history part, and I'm gonna have to get my phone and reference Never Say Die's website.
I'm ready to learn. Will there be a test at the end?
No test. Okay, so in 1951 on Hamburg Farm in Lexington, Kentucky.
That's where we are.
Yeah, we're just miles from that. A foal had a rough birth and its life was in danger due to poor breathing. Legendary horseman John A. Bell III was on site and poured a shot of whiskey down the throat of the struggling foal. Through the night, the young horse made a dramatic recovery and was aptly named Never Say Die. So this is named after that horse. Yeah. Hey, whiskey.
They did what?
It's good for what ails you.
I guess. That's probably on the bottom of the list of things I would do if I saw an animal struggling.
If I'm struggling, you better give me some whiskey.
That is what you like.
3 years later, after experiencing some success in England, Never Say Die was entered into the biggest race in the world. I would say the biggest race in the world is Kentucky Derby, but hey, that's two Kentuckians saying that. But they say the 175th running of the Derby Stakes at Epsom Downs, aka the Epsom Derby. I hope I'm saying that right, Epsom. In front of a bunch of spectators, including the Queen and Winston Churchill, Never Say Die at 33-1 odds beat out 22 other horses, become the first American-born horse to win the race in over 70 years.
And obviously it was because of the whiskey.
Obviously it was.
Obviously.
So this is mirroring the horse, born and raised in Kentucky, and then over to England to achieve accolades. It gets cooler still. Meanwhile, on the other side of England, a woman in Liverpool named Mona Best had fallen in love with the name and story of Never Say Die. On a daring leap of faith, she pawned all of her jewelry and literally bet it all on Never Say Die at 33-1 odds. With her new fortune, she purchased a historic Victorian home in Liverpool and transformed it into a music venue. The basement was a low-key stage for up-and-coming musicians called the Casbah Coffee Club.
I see where this is going.
The opening night of the Casbah Coffee Club featured a band called the Quarrymen. The band members, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison, were each paid £3 for their weekly gig. The Quarrymen actually hired Mona Best's son, Peter Best, to be their next full-time drummer, who was eventually replaced by a chap named Ringo Starr. They later became the Beatles. I don't know if you've heard of them before.
This is a story I didn't know.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm hearing it.
Rock and roll history was forever changed by a band's humble beginning at the Casbah Coffee Club and the shocking upset victory of Never Say Die, a horse who may have never run a race without the faithful sip of whiskey on that cold Kentucky night. Story time over. But super cool, right?
That's quite this tale.
I mean, I know so much whiskey is, based in marketing and the cool story behind it, and this is that, but we're here to see if it,
it's an interesting
stands up to that.
story of how all those things are connected, sort of like the butterfly effect. Like,
right.
If that horse hadn't ran it, she hadn't have bet all that money to win. To like, would that band have come together in that way? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's a domino effect type of thing.
Exactly. So this is a 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley.
You can definitely smell that rye.
Yeah, high rye.
Like freshly cracked black pepper.
Yes.
I mean, that for me on the nose is
and a little herbal.
It's pretty prominent. That and the herbal notes. I think also coming from the rye.
It smells. I mean,
it's very different than
older than
very different than most on-the-shelf products. I would say that are just straight up Kentucky, or even just like things that are distilled at Wilderness Trail.
Agreed.
It definitely has its own personality.
Okay, well, to your health. A shot of whiskey down your throat.
Apparently.
Whoa, that got a punch for 95 proof.
Yeah, it's that rye,
the high rye.
Yeah, the higher rye.
Yeah.
Some rye spice, some herbal,
cracked black pepper.
Still that, kind of core Wilderness Trail Distillery type of feeling to it.
Absolutely. They also have a barrel proof and a rye whiskey. We just have a small batch right now.
Ooh, I want to try that barrel proof.
Yeah, hoping to try that barrel proof and the rye as well, which is more of a Kentucky rye. I think it's like 56% rye.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't yet gone in for the second sip.
I'm ready.
I'm waiting, and here it comes. Here's that Kentucky transatlantic England
London fog.
hug. Yeah, actually pretty impressive for a 95 proof, the amount of hug, and a decently long finish. Not super long, but decently long.
I feel that warmth coming in too. I'm going to credit that also to the rye percentage. I feel like while only 21% rye, when we see other brands that have higher percentages like Four Roses, for example, this is really bringing it. I'm liking it though.
Yeah.
Before we go into our second sip, Chad?
Yes, as we often do, before we do the second sip, we want to pause and tell you about our home on the internet. It's whiskyambitions.com. It's where you can get this lovely whiskey sweater that I am wearing. Sarah, your long sleeve Drink More Bourbon
which is also
shirt.
Lovely.
It is also lovely.
Thank you.
Equally as lovely.
Uh-huh.
Hats, our Glencairns, but also rocks glasses and copitas, water glasses, bottle cut candles, more always coming soon. And right now until December 17th, site-wide, 10% off for the holidays. That's at whiskyambitions.com.
You can become a patron at patreon.com/itsbourbonnight and join our community for as little as $1 a month. And that's where we do after the episode exclusives, access to barrel picks, discounts on that merch that Chad was talking about, and more.
And we'll be right back. Okay, second sip, here we go.
Oh, it's really changed as it's sat here. The pepper note has dissipated a bit. Getting more of that traditional bourbon nose, oak and brown sugar. I like the mouthfeel. Yeah, the rye is, as it's sat, it definitely benefits from like a few minutes in the glass.
Yes.
The rye kind of calms down a little bit and it becomes more, I don't know, you get more of the bourbon notes.
Yeah.
The traditional.
On that second sip, I was reminded for some reason of skillet cornbread, but the type that has the jalapeno in there, which I don't prefer over the non-jalapeno, but the rye spice in this sort of reminded me of a jalapeno cornbread.
Which again makes sense for something that's 75% corn with a higher percentage of rye in it. Like,
it tracks.
Yeah, that
but
does
also
track.
that cast iron skillet type of vibe. It's got that, and I think come from the barrel,
Layers.
or maybe the 6 weeks of agitation in the shipping container as it crossed the Atlantic. Maybe I don't know, the mellowing in England. I'm not exactly sure, but it sort of has that homey kind of comfort food vibe in its finish.
And the longer it sits here and the more I keep going back to it, the more I'm enjoying it because I feel like it's opening up.
If you guys watched at the time of this video, our last Friday's video, when we did a bourbon hunting video, we found this bottle on that hunt out at a shop, Ernie Spirits, where we ended up buying the bourbon that we were challenged to find. It was around $65 is what we paid for it. It's a 700 ml, of course, because overseas. I mean, if we're ready for the recommend or not part.
I'm still kind of just enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm like the last thing I guess I would want to add is that I'm pretty impressed by the mouthfeel that it retains at 95 proof. Being brought down, I think sometimes you lose that with the addition of water, but I still feel like this is holding on to a really solid mouthfeel.
Yeah, the mouthfeel and the perception of proof, blind, I feel like I would be guessing 100 on the low end. In an enjoyable way. It's not like overly hot or anything. It's just coming across very full.
Yeah, and again, the longer I sit with this, the more that initial rye, spice, and herbal quells kind of simmers down, and I think that I keep going back to it because I get something different every time. Like on the finish, I'm like, is that a little bit of lemon zest? Kind of an herbal tea, but with some honey. Like it's really
citrus.
nice, and each part of it, I feel like I'm experiencing something a little bit different. And for the price point, that is what I expect from something that is 95 proof. You know, if we're gonna go with those stats because of the story and everything it goes through, obviously the price comes out to what it is. But if it's gonna be that, I want it to be something I can sit with and dig into, and you know, it kind of, I don't know, makes you think a little bit.
I agree.
It's not just like, it's good. I'm like, every time I sip it, I have something new to say.
Well, I love it when a bottle isn't just the story. The story always helps. That's cool, especially when you can sit around and you can, you know, regurgitate that story to someone who hasn't. I know that's not maybe
That's
not the best
what you did
word.
to me, though. Regurgitate the story.
But tell the story to someone who doesn't know it over a glass as you're drinking it. It just obviously enhances the experience. So that's nice, but you know, it's good that what's in the bottle backs it up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised with something coming out of Wilderness Trail Distillery that backs it up. You know,
True.
If you've seen our Know Your Distillery Wilderness Trail, I recommend it if you haven't seen it. But yeah, they do some cool things over there. So.
They do.
I'm interested in the barrel proof version.
Absolutely.
But
you know us.
I like this.
Yeah, I think 95 proof. It's not going to scare away people who are getting into bourbon. They're like, "Ooh, 95. That's you know, a little close to 100." But it also won't turn away your proof hounds who are like, "Oh, 95. It's not even 100. I don't want to bother." I think it's striking a nice balance on that.
Yeah,
and for the price, I'm going to give it the recommend as well. But hey, that's where we better leave it. If you haven't subscribed to us already, you can do so by clicking right up here. There's suggestions of other videos down here, and we hope to see you over there in one of those. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Chad.
Okay, until next time, drink more bourbon.
That was awful.